This is ND Insider's Pot of Gold. Now, with all things Notre Dame football, here's Tom Noie, Mike Berardino, and Austin Huff.
A midweek edition of the Pot of Gold coming to you live or taped from the WNDU studios, your home for a countdown to kickoff. That is producer Jerry. He is Mike Berardino. I am Tom Noie. And there's snow on the ground outside in South Bend. Welcome to November 1st. 2-3 inches on the ground in South Bend. It is definitely winter. You know what that means, Mike B? It's basketball season.
Oh, Tom
Let's
Noie.
go.
Here we go.
Basketball season. The Micah Shrewsbury era officially begins in about 7.5 hours. The Irish will play an exhibition game Wednesday at Purcell Pavilion. I will be there. Mike B will be taking over the rest of the podcast here in a little bit with our special guest, Eric Mac Lain from the ACC Network. We'll talk all things ACC. We'll talk Clemson. We'll also maybe later on talk predictions. And we might have a surprise prediction at the end of the show. We'll have to wait and see on that one. So, no? Maybe?
We'll see. Stick around.
See.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Well, before we get to that, Notre Dame has run its record to 7-2 with a 58-7 victory over Pittsburgh. Arguably, maybe, yes, no, kind of, sort of, its most complete game of the year on Saturday. Scoring in all three phases, offense, defense, special teams again for the second week in a row. The Irish, really no problem against Pittsburgh. Now, the news was not all good because on Monday, Mike Berardino, what did we find out about one Mitchell Evans?
Well, he had tore his ACL on that play at the end of the third quarter, and he's out for the year, as people know. And that's a huge blow to an individual who had a breakthrough season. It was so important in a variety of ways: pass catching, run blocking. Just had the clutch gene, it seemed, and was a reliable target for Sam Hartman. So, opportunity now for Holden Stays, Eli Reardon, and the freshman, the precocious Cooper Flanagan.
If you're a tight end at Notre Dame, you're a little worried right now with all these knee injuries going on. We've got Kevin Ballman, who's had 2, Eli Reardon, who's had 2. Now Mitchell Evans blows out his ACL and does it basically at the end of October, which is going to wipe out most of his 2024 season. Mitchell Evans, team leading, 29 catches, 422 yards, 1 touchdown, averaging 52 yards receiving per game, but was the guy in the pass game for Sam Hartman as far as a security blanket, as far as a guy to go to if you needed a reception. You'd think that would be Jaden Thomas, maybe Jaden Greathouse. It was Mitchell Evans. Now Evans is done. Holden Stays will be the starter. Cooper Flanagan, maybe the number 2. Eli Reardon. Everybody keeps waiting on Eli Reardon the way they kept waiting on Rocco Spindler. It's like Eli Reardon's like the flavor, the tight end flavor of the week, or the offensive player of the week for Notre Dame because it's maybe Eli Reardon. We've seen nothing from Eli Reardon that tells us he's ready for a major role on this football team right now.
Yeah, well, I'm guilty as charged. I mean,
Guilty.
I wrote the preseason look at the tight end position. The special little pull-out feature was Eli. I mean, he's going to get his chance eventually, and it is time. I'm sure he's as frustrated as anybody, or he's pleased with what he's been able to do. In the run blocking, he's been part of their jumbo package whenever healthy, going back to last year. But there's no reason that frame, that skill set, that pedigree coming out of Iowa as a high school prospect, that family pedigree at Notre Dame, which is cool. I mean, the table is set, once he gets going, I think he will be a reliable weapon. He's going to have to be.
Notre Dame offensively, over 500 yards total offense. Sam Hartman did not throw a touchdown pass. They did get a touchdown pass. Cooper Flanagan got one, his first of his career, from Steve Angeli. Are we now beyond the offense, the worries about this offense as to what's wrong with Jared Parker's play calling or Sam Hartman at quarterback or the run game or the wide receiving game? Does the 500 total plus yards against Pittsburgh solve the concerns about what ails or supposedly ails this Notre Dame offense?
No, because that's Pittsburgh, Tom. That was Pittsburgh, and
no love for the Panthers.
No, I know that's not even Pat Narduzzi after the game was complaining about his talent
his
level.
Own guys.
Yeah. Who recruited him there, Pat? So he had to apologize. Anytime the team you defeated has the head coach in the post game complaining about the material he's got to work with, and then the next day having to apologize because the players turned on him, apparently.
That is unbelievable. Like, okay, it's different when you cover the University of Notre Dame, whether it's football, men's basketball, whatever program you cover at Notre Dame. I was stunned to see his players, Pat Narduzzi's own players, clapping back at him on Twitter or on X, like on social media. Pat Narduzzi offers the explanation as to, we did a poor job replacing. I'm paraphrasing now what I think he was trying to say. We did a poor job in replacing some of the players we needed to replace off of last year's team. We didn't do that. Thus, they lose 58-7. And the players on this year's team are firing back at the head coach on Twitter. Can you imagine that happening to Marcus Freeman? That's amazing.
It's and just about anywhere. It's
right.
A wild thing. It's he'd better get that Michigan State job, or he's going to be he's going to be a defensive coordinator again somewhere. In the MAC. But and it's amazing how quickly it can turn. I mean, it's just a reminder that you are massaging egos as much as you are coaching fundamentals in many cases, and those guys didn't take well to it. So much for that blue vase in the Pitt facility where you put all your negative thoughts.
You think they put some negative thoughts in there on Monday morning back in Oakland?
The blue vase is in pieces on the floor there, but that's Pitt, and that's why I asked Boo Corrigan last night on the conference call, and I had the raise hand function. I got in there, and I wanted to know how they processed the committee, the College Football Playoff Committee, put Notre Dame at 15. I know Louisville only has one loss, but it was Pittsburgh.
Right.
And it was one-sided. It was 38-21. Pittsburgh, we just saw Pittsburgh just awful in the second half against Notre Dame. And they were outscored 41-7 in the second half. That same Pittsburgh team a couple weeks back shut out Louisville in the second half 24-0. So I asked a question about how you process that, and also that Notre Dame's only other loss was against the number one team on the committee's board, Ohio State, and under controversial circumstances, very hair-splitting difference there at the end, and basically a tie.
And the question you're asking Boo Corrigan is because Notre Dame is ranked 15th and Louisville's ranked 13th?
13th, yes.
How do you rank Louisville 13th in the college football playoff poll? What did he say?
Let me. It's on SouthBendTribune.com. We invite you to check that out. But the quotes from Boo Corrigan, the second year of him leading this committee. So NC State's athletic director, Kevin Corrigan's
Notre Dame graduate, Boo Corrigan,
brother, right?
Yeah.
The Corrigan family. They'll be bending over backwards to be fair and not favor Notre Dame. And also I pointed out that Boo Corrigan had a AD level seat for Louisville's awful performance at NC State, 13-10, unwatchable. We agreed, unwatchable.
It was unwatchable. We were in Raleigh that night.
Did not look like the number 13 team. And Notre Dame had gone to NC State, and it was a weird game because of the delay, the lightning delay that everybody clicked on. But great lightning coverage by Tom. Are you going to submit that?
Tune in to Notre Dame Insider for we cover lightning and rain delays like no other entity.
Tremendous work.
We're all over
Tremendous work on that.
Thank you, Mike.
But it was 45-24 Notre Dame. So those two, I didn't even get into that. I put it in the story. So here's the quote from Boo Corrigan. He said, "We talked a great deal about the Louisville win over Notre Dame. The Pitt game for Louisville, their running back, Jawar Jordan, I think he ended up with 2 carries and was out. But looking at the total body of work, we were more comfortable as a group with Louisville ahead of Notre Dame." So I know Jawar Jordan lit up Notre Dame.
He was really good.
143 yards, 21 carries, 2 touchdowns. An important piece of the Louisville offense. Is he a 68-point difference maker, as I mentioned on Twitter? No, because it was minus 17 for Pitt, Louisville at Pitt, and Notre Dame destroyed them. They beat them by 51. So I don't know. They're going to get another chance to come back at it. The only thing I can come back at is they had basically all the undefeated. Had the first 5 undefeated teams in order, and then you start. Then you have all the one loss teams in order, and they saved the other 2 unbeatens for the 24 and 25 or late. And then all the 2 loss teams are stacked in order, and I think that's so simplistic.
So not a lot of originality for this college football.
Not on this try. Try again next week, fellas and lady. Kelly Whiteside's there too.
Come on, Boo Corrigan. What are you doing? Where should have Notre Dame been ranked? 12?
Hey,
11?
hey. Be careful with 12 right now. Be careful with 12. That's from Missouri.
I figured
Hey.
producer Jerry would have an issue with number 12.
Hey, we have Georgia this week. Let us enjoy our 1 week of fun, okay? We'll go back to normal. I promise.
The only 2-loss team I have ahead of Notre Dame in the AP poll that I have to submit every Sunday is LSU, and that's a coin flip to me. I had them 13, and so I had Louisville a couple slots behind because I'm really. The other thing is Louisville hasn't played anybody. Notre Dame's the only team that played that was even. Now remember, Duke's not in the top 25 for the college football playoff. Louisville handled Duke in a way that Notre Dame didn't. But if the committee doesn't see Duke as top 25 material, it was number 17 when Notre Dame pulled it out in the last minute, and in Durham, then that's really just another win. It's a meh win. Notre Dame, even the loss, is razor thin. I know it's at home. I know they forgot to put 11 guys on the field, but that's Ohio State. If that's your number one team, that's almost you should get credit for a loss of that quality as opposed to wins over Georgia Tech, et cetera. Although Georgia Tech is feisty here.
Yeah, watch out for the Yellow Jackets. They beat North Carolina. North Carolina doing its usual North Carolina stuff.
They're North Carolina. They're Tar Heeling. They're Mac Browning.
They are Mac Browning.
He does have the one national title with Vince Young, but they're Mac Browning.
But as soon as you get some interest in North Carolina, they might be able to do this. They might be able to do that. They lose to Georgia Tech. Who did they lose to? Who was their first loss to?
Virginia.
The
Who's?
You can't.
I dropped Carolina out of the top 25. 2-loss team, get out.
Gone.
Yeah. That's not stunning, but it's a shame that we're not here to talk about Drake May. But it's a shame for a guy of that talent that
to be average.
He's going to have a nice NFL quarterback, but very few college memories.
Where's Notre Dame going bowling? How about that question?
Well, you'd hope somewhere warm after yesterday, but that's who knows. I mean, maybe it is a little Pop-Tarts action.
Well,
if the committee,
bowl.
Peach Bowl. There had been a lot of projection for Peach Bowl, and that would be a New Year's 6 game, the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, all the waffle fries you can eat at halftime, and wait till you see me go at the waffle fries. But it's kind of in flux right now based on because the committee has the word. I mean, they said they do not look at the national polls. They do not look at last season. They try to reassess week to week. So it's a bit of a crapshoot, but there'll be 5 more of those. And of course, Notre Dame's going to have to run the table. If you assume you want to get to Peach Bowl, Tom,
I'm assuming
there can be
that
no more losses.
Some of us aren't assuming that. We'll get to that later on in the show, but I'm pulling for Notre Dame to finish 10-2 because I want to go see Notre Dame play in the Peach Bowl against Alabama. I don't want to have to make the decision on covering if it's the Pop-Tarts Bowl, sorry, you're going there by yourself. I'm not going to no Pop-Tarts Bowl.
What's wrong with Pop-Tarts?
I don't want a Pop.
Did you see how the same people that the Cheez-Its were flying last time? Imagine, I might get a year's supply of Pop-Tarts as media gifts.
So you're good with the Pop-Tarts Bowl or the Duke's Mayo Bowl because you want to see Marcus Freeman covered in Duke's Mayo at the end of the game.
I didn't. The way they do that. That's your.
So.
That's Charlotte, right? That's in Charlotte.
That is Charlotte.
I've been to Charlotte. I don't need to go back for that.
I don't want to see Charlotte.
I said I'm on the record. I want some sunshine. Fiesta Bate Holiday Bowl. Remember they almost got to the Holiday Bowl last year. Any year, just give me the Holiday Bowl. I don't care about.
You can go out to the Holiday Bowl. I think we have a stringer out there that can help you help the cover Notre Dame football out in San Diego.
Oh wow!
How about that? Yeah, we're all
over podcasting. He'll handle the podcast. He's great.
Hello,
Fernando.
We're all over the place on this show. I don't know why. Maybe it's the snow.
It's me.
It's sorry. November. It's Berardino. He always throws me off track. Let's get back to a better story than the Pop-Tarts Bowl or whatever bowl. Mm-hmm. Big day Saturday for Jaden Mickey. Why? Against Pittsburgh with his pick six.
Well, that was emotional because his mother, Nilka, has been public about her fight against colon cancer, and he's written a book, a youth-focused book on handling adversity, and it's called The Win Isn't Always on the Scoreboard, and he dedicated that after the game to his mom, who is in the final stages potentially of this. So really, it's she needs our prayers. And her husband Lamar Mickey, Dr. Mickey, went on social media right away and let the world know, shared that moment with everyone. And then Jaden Mickey came in and shared it beautifully. Considering all that the young man has gone through so far, and there have been some rough patches, and even in that game, there's some rough patches, some near misses, near touchdown over his head.
Both ways, near misses. He had a near pick six, or before he had his pick six, and then could have given up a big play the other way.
Beautiful moment, and it should be celebrated. And let's hope that for all that's been on his mind and his heart, and will continue to be, let's hope that frees him up to play to the talent level, because we've seen it in practices, open practices in his time here in the spring and the fall, that he's got ability. And Marcus Freeman, again, said, I believe in him. I love Jaden Mickey. He's the perfect example of one play, one life. And that came through again. So, so apparently Ben Morrison on paper, where Marcus Freeman says Morrison and Hart are ready to go. But fans that are worried about the drop-off behind them should be very encouraged. I know, and again, it was Pitt, but those guys, Christian Gray and Christian Gray had tremendous rating for Pro Football Focus for his work in that game, and really overall this year, anytime he's out there. And Jaden Mickey held up under the scrutiny.
So a solid for Notre Dame, because you a contrast of two programs. We talked about what the University of Pittsburgh was all about with Pat Narduzzi and the players clapping back at their head coach. Then you get a guy like Jaden Mickey, whose mother's battling colon cancer, and he comes in and speaks so well post game. Like you don't find that at every school that you cover. So kudos to Jaden Mickey to come in, talk to us the way he did on Saturday, to play the way he did, and really step in for Ben Morrison, because we didn't find out about Ben Morrison. It was a minute 20 left before and then here's Mike Berardino having to knock out a story on Ben Morrison being sidelined for the game. A minute 20 before the first kick, and they announced in the press box that he's suffering a quad injury. It was a game time decision. He was warming up, decided that he couldn't give it a go. Jaden Mickey steps in. Christian Gray, we talked to him on Tuesday. He stepped in. He played well. So Cam Hart leaving for the NFL after the season. Ben Morrison closer to the NFL, but the cornerback position in good hands with Christian Gray and Jaden Mickey.
Don't forget, in development, in the shadows, Micah Bell, the fastest of all of them. Looking forward to seeing him once he's brought into the mix. But he's here, and he's being brought along. But that's Mike Mickens came up. Marcus Freeman talked about how Mike Mickens, a cornerback coach, his longtime friend, and the pass game defensive coordinator, is ready, absolutely ready to be a defensive coordinator. He said it was a very strong endorsement. We know he believes in Mike Mickens. The first time that he put it in those terms, he was asked about that question about whether he was ready for a defense. First time I think anyone has asked him whether the defensive coordinator question, because Al Golden's doing a heck of a job. But there's this general sense out there, wherever it comes from, that Al Golden maybe hits his history, that 2 years with the Bengals. Before that, it was 2 years with linebackers with the Lions, 2 years with the tight ends. That there's just sense that he might want another challenge. He's not said that. He's not, in fairness, he's not been asked that. So it's kind of an assumption. But Notre Dame's not going to want to see Mike Mickens walk out the door, because an incredible weapon for them in teaching the game to defensive backs, in identifying talent, in convincing those recruits to come here, and you hope you can retain. That's every offseason. You hope you can retain the group, and there are no more promotions out there for Mike Mickens within the house, because he's already past game coordinator. You can't bump him up anymore unless Al Golden decides to go to the NFL or be a head coach, back to being a head coach at another college program, which he is more than capable of doing.
So safe to say, if things happen in the offseason and Al Golden decides that he's ready for a different challenge, don't be surprised if Mike Mickens is your next defensive coordinator at the University of Notre Dame.
Don't be surprised. There's probably no search. I mean, it's an automatic elevation. It's an obvious.
Done.
Yeah. Al Washington would be a person that would he's the run game coordinator. Actually, had turned down a chance to be the Tennessee DC and during his Ohio State years. So that might be a bit of a sticking point. But basically, Marcus Freeman's on record that Mike Mickens is a defensive coordinator, absolutely ready, quality assistant, and it's just a matter of opportunity. And there will be, after an endorsement like that, there will be other schools that have
coming
him
after him
at the top of that list, and there'll have to be a decision, probably leading up to December. That'll be one of the topics is whether Mike Mickens.
Should he stay? Should he go? We shall see. That's our first segment. Coming up, Mike Berardino will talk with ACC Network's Eric Mac Lain, all things ACC. Get into the Irish, get into the ACC, get into Clemson, that and much more after this break. Stay tuned.
Back on Pot of Gold, and we're very pleased to be joined by Eric Mac Lain from the ACC Network, and former Clemson offensive line great, and all-around good dude. Thanks for joining us, Eric. How you been?
Man, I'm just living the dream, brother. It's a fun week. I'm going to try to look away from the 4-4 schedule or record and get excited about this game, because it's interesting enough, man. I have a ton of family up in Indiana. I have a bunch of Notre Dame fans, some not so much Notre Dame fans that live up there. And this is always such a special game to me. And, obviously thinking back to my senior year when we played that game in a hurricane. So always look forward to this matchup.
Well, I've been saying that Hurricane Joaquin, right? That was the crazy cause of all that rain, is going to have to share the stage perhaps this week with Tyler from Spartanburg. And
that's right.
This is, if the Tigers turn around their season, if Dabo's kind of a rally of the troops, this feels like a bring your own guts game for Clemson. And do you get that feeling because you know exactly what you guys were doing as you launched that dynasty into overdrive in 2015?
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up. I've got this little paperweight right here that Coach gave me, that BYOG. So I've got it unprompted, it's there. And it's, it's something of that magnitude that it's going to take in this game, man. This is a Clemson that, quite frankly, is just struggling, with their identity, with little things, turnovers, and really getting it together going against a Notre Dame team that is very comfortable in what they are and who they are and the things that they're doing, especially coming off that massive win against Pittsburgh and how fun that was from a complete, game standpoint where everybody seems to be scoring touchdowns defensively, special teams, and of course on offense. So, yeah, Clemson's going to have to figure it out quickly. Obviously, that big offensive line, strong running game, and, tenacious defense. The defensive side of the ball is, I think, probably where people don't give Notre Dame enough credit. I mean, that is really where they have closed the gap speed-wise when you look at that team and the things that they have done. So it's going to be a tough matchup, no question.
You look at some of the uncertains. I guess Will Shipley might be a game-time decision. That's kind of a big piece there, with the concussion protocol. Notre Dame already knows that Mitchell Evans is out there without their tight end, who's had just a breakout season, has become Sam Hartman's trusted weapon on third down. Do you expect Shipley to play? You think how big a loss is that to the Clemson offense already struggling without a guy who entered the year as a Heisman possibility?
Well, yeah, no question. Obviously I haven't been in that training room or meeting rooms and no clue where he is, but just strictly based on what I saw, I would be shocked if he plays this week. I mean, there was a time where, he was sprawled out on the ground and I was just like, oh my gosh, thinking the worst, the way that he was just laying there, not moving anything. And then of course you see him move around and eventually get up and walk off the field. So I don't know. I would be shocked if he plays, but yeah, certainly when you lose a player of that magnitude or potentially lose a player of that magnitude, that not even just from a, on the field production standpoint, because we all know what he can do, physically, but just from a leadership standpoint and being in that huddle and being in that locker room, which he still will I assume, be able to do from, some matter of fact, being that it's at Clemson and a home game. But yeah, Clemson will potentially miss that if he's not able to go, and the problems that he can cause for an opposing defense and, just what he provides for this Clemson offense.
Talking with Eric Mac Lain, analyst for the ACC Network and studio analyst on The Huddle. And what did you make of the first, where the ACC came out of the first round of, and of course we'll lump Notre Dame into that as a scheduling partner from the College Football Playoff Selection Committee. What was your take on where Florida State and Louisville being ahead of Notre Dame, despite I was kind of hung up on the fact that Pittsburgh beat Louisville and couldn't compete with Notre Dame.
Right. Well, I appreciate you letting us lump you in there. Thank you for that. Taking credit for that. We have 3 of them now. I like that. It's interesting when you look at it because, clearly Louisville, what an opportunity that they potentially wasted, as of right now, definitely where they could be. I'm looking at that ranking and thinking Louisville might be 6 or 7 if they take care of business and are undefeated and, just playing that is not playing very well right now in Pittsburgh. And, if they just handle business in that game, where they could be. Florida State, a different animal. I think they are truly one of the few, teams that could win a national championship, certainly participate in the college football playoff. They have so many answers, man, offensively with what they can do. And I feel like they're ascending right now at the right time. You obviously want to be good in September, especially when you have the out-of-conference games that they did. But it's all about November, December. That's where you want to be playing your best football, and that's exactly where Florida State is right now, especially their signal caller, Jordan Travis. He's a guy that was on the preseason list and then probably faded away as September came and went, but now squarely back. Statistically, this guy's blowing up. Production has been fantastic, and really the way that they are winning. I just felt like after that Clemson game, they kind of got over that hump and we're standing there like, okay, we can do this. Like we feel really good. We got that obstacle that we haven't done in 8 years out of the way. Let's go. Let's take it into overdrive. And they've been blowing people out ever since. So very impressed with what I've seen from them and the continued dominance that Florida State has had this season.
Let's get back to this Clemson Notre Dame game because I do think it's going to be more of an instant classic, perhaps maybe not a sightly, but I think it's going to be very competitive, and I think Clemson's very dangerous. Do you think Clemson's more dangerous at this point to Notre Dame or in disarray? It's one of those words, I suppose, at a time like this. They feel dangerous to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it is. It's just interesting how their season is going because there's so many little problems that are stepping up. Or showing themselves, and it's just has been insurmountable for Clemson. It's been this mound of junk just sitting there that it seems like every play somebody else is on the wrong page. Whether it's a holding call after you had a massive 20, 30-yard gain, it's making the decision to pass it to this guy instead of the wide open guy downfield that maybe is a touchdown that changes everything, fumbling on the 1-yard line. Throwing an option read to the left when you could just run it to potentially beat Florida State in overtime. It's so many little things that have stacked up. And primarily, I think it's quite obvious the turnovers have just absolutely killed Clemson, in these games. And, the amount of turnovers in the red zone and not scoring touchdowns and even points at times in the red zone has been brutal for these guys. And so it does feel like if, you figure that out and you're able to get that going and contained and turned into touchdowns, you're in such a better place. Now, I'm probably not as bullish sitting here saying that if Clemson doesn't have these turnovers, they're 8-0 because there have been other things that have occurred that led to that. But it certainly is a big reason. Now, the dangerous part, I feel like, Clemson obviously feels very disrespected, which given, you're 4-4, you haven't put a good product consistently on the field, but even maybe a little bit attacked. And we all know that when these locker rooms can galvanize, when these locker rooms can hang on to anything to feel that us against the world mentality, you're in a dangerous spot. On top of it being a home game, I know Clemson and Clemson fans much rather this game be at night. It's at high noon, but no question the Valley provides that alternative excitement and added kind of firepower there having those guys. So they'll be ready, as you said. I am a little surprised by the line, though. With it being as close as the people out west think it's going to be, I figured Notre Dame, especially coming off a 51-point W, would be a little bit more favored in this game.
Huh. Well, so even some of the doubt creeps in from someone who knows this program, inside and out. The 12 straight 11-win season streak is incredible, but that's over. And then if you look back, going back to the Notre Dame Clemson game in the 2020 season for the ACC championship, the rematch, Clemson won the one that mattered. But right after that, starting with that Ohio State loss in the college football playoff, Clemson is 25-11. So some people out there, some of the pundits would say that the dynasty is over or on pause. Where is it right now, do you think? And even some of the recruiting rankings, for what they're worth, have shown, Clemson was a top 5 recruiting machine, and now more in that 10 to 15 range. Is it just in a transition phase? Is the era of glory over? Has Florida State supplanted it? Where is it?
Yeah, I think obviously when you lose, 2 generational quarterbacks, that's tough, right? I mean, I'm talking legit, best that any program may have ever had. When you look at those 2 guys, and they had them back to back, it is nice for a time, but then it's hard to bounce back after that. And so you're having to learn, you're having to figure out. This is a very different world from when that happened with NIL and with the transfer portal and all these other things. So gaps have been able to close a lot faster in the talent realm. I mean, it was just 3.5, 4 years ago when Clemson delivered the worst loss ever that Florida State has experienced at home. I think a 50-point W or something of that nature, where they scored all those points. Louisville scored like 70, 80 points on them. And those gaps have closed because of these different opportunities. And it's just a different world. I think the conference in whole is in such a better place right now from a competition standpoint, with those teams to the top and the things that they've been able to do. So, obviously harder landscape. But on top of, unfortunately not having a quarterback come in that you thought would be all war, that set records against Notre Dame in South Bend, that threw for the most ever that anybody has ever passed. And then when he gets the full-time job, it just didn't click for whatever reason. And the success that he's had, DJ Uiagalelei at Oregon State, has been great to see, because you don't want these young men to struggle or fail and when they go to different areas here. So I think that is obviously an interesting thing. Cade Klubnik struggles right now as a very young quarterback. I think he's going into his 9th start against the Irish here, and how difficult that is, because it takes growing up at that position, and it's hard to be a young guy inserted into that role, especially at a place like Clemson. The amount of responsibility, the amount of expectation, and the things that go into that. So, with some of those problems, with some of those misses in recruiting, I think that obviously has set the Tigers back, where they're not in the national championship era, or not in the national championship discussion, which some people think is taking quite a step backwards. So for me, man, it's all about perspective. It's all about understanding where you are and what you're doing and how you're doing it. It's hard to be at that level. It's definitely hard to be at that level, for decades at a time. Clemson did it for about a 10-year run and have now, descended a little bit, and figuring out how to get back to there, obviously, is the question. The recruiting things would be interesting to look at. I'd love to see, some of those more in-depth numbers, because to me, it feels like Clemson kind of had standalone class, and that might have been Trevor and them, maybe the class after, but primarily in that sweet spot, kind of that 8 to 15 is where Clemson, I think, has been. And so I don't think there's really a change there. They have a couple of 5-stars committed. I think people are obviously still very interested and excited about the program. But yeah, certainly getting back to that national presence, that playoff, competing team is where the expectation now is, because of the success and how quickly that success came to the Tigers.
You mentioned quarterback, elite quarterbacks, and I want to ask you about Sam Hartman. But before we get to that, Sam Hartman came here as a transfer, and the thought out there, and maybe even Dabo's on record specifically saying that to preserve the Clemson culture, for whatever reason, the perception is that Clemson isn't going to play the transfer portal game at least as effectively or as outright aggressively as so many programs have to stay at the top. Do you see that evolving at any point, or is Clemson maybe a case study in culture versus changing on the fly, getting the best available talent, the most experienced talent?
Sure. Yeah. No, I certainly think that you'd love to see them dip into it, just to have that instant depth. It's difficult when there's a resource that's out there, and you can add a guy who is experienced, who is obviously proven at this level, and can help you right away, versus taking the time to develop. that's kind of what I was talking about with that gap and the closing of it talent-wise. You see a Florida State team, and I think maybe it's not still true to this point, but given last week in their touchdown scored, it's been by all transfers. I mean, these are guys that they've brought in, that have had success other places, and you see how successful they have obviously been at doing that. I would love to certainly see Clemson address that if the numbers provided work. The deal that Clemson ran into this year, told by Coach Dabo Swinney, is they had too many guys come back. Ruka Rororo, Tyler Davis, all these guys on the perimeter decided to come back, and Clemson wasn't expecting that. Clemson kind of had their numbers from a recruiting standpoint that they offered and that they felt good about, kind of meeting where they would be. And so they had no extra scholarship to offer. They had no other place that they could go there. And for me, that's a difficult thing with roster management and trying to figure that out. So now if that happens again this year, I'm not sure, but would love to see them entertain that to go get that. And listen, it doesn't have to be a roster overhaul like we've seen at Colorado, that we saw at Louisville, that we've seen Florida State at times, go out and get, 20 whatever people to come in, or over a course of a couple of years have all those people come in. It can just be one or two pieces that you can just help and instantly, like I said, have that competitive depth. So, would love to see that. But again, if you don't have the numbers, you don't have the numbers. And, it's something that you have to obviously pay attention to.
And Sam Hartman trying to avoid going 0-5 as a starter against Clemson. No shame in losing Clemson over the years, but certainly doesn't want to, with all the positive records he has on his ledger. And he brought it up even this week. He says, because he remembers the 1 year he was redshirting, they also, Wake Forest also lost that one. But Clemson's pinned 18 sacks on him, but he's only thrown 2 interceptions in those 4 games. And basically, he kind of had a bugaboo with NC State, and he overcame it this year. Louisville got the best of him again. Duke, he's always had pretty good success against, and Pittsburgh had really embarrassed him in the ACC championship game, and he came back and remedied that. Is there anything on the mental side, Sam Hartman versus Clemson, or has that just been talent overwhelming those Wake Forest lines in a way that perhaps Notre Dame will be able to protect him better?
Yeah, sure. I think certainly the mental side of it is, I want to do this. I want to get this W, and the competitive edge that Sam has. I mean, man, he's been one of my favorite people to cover. Just his story, his competitive drive, really being forced into action at a young age and then taking a seat and getting right back in it to one of the best, if not the best, quarterback in Wake Forest history. And I think cementing himself right there at Notre Dame as well, with just his style of play and the things that he can do. So he's a heck of a ball player. It's going to be an interesting challenge for him. Like you said, not having Evans, the tight end that has been so reliable and such a game changer for, this Notre Dame offense. But maybe you see a guy like Chris Tyree get more involved. I know he was very excited about the special team success and kind of coach saying, we want him back one more year. We think he's just scratching the surface of what he can be. So it will be a very interesting approach. What does Notre Dame try to do? Is it ground and pound and run the football and wear down this defense? Or is it testing some of those, young wide receivers or inexperienced receivers that they have, and, kind of knowing your best guy is a freshman there, going against these seniors and really talented defensive backs. So going to be a fun matchup. I know Sam is excited to get back in the Valley just because it's one of the greatest environments in college football. But certainly, I think he's feeling good about his chances just when you see the struggles that Clemson has gone through this season.
All right, so we want to get you out of here. We really appreciate you joining us. Eric Mac Lain from the ACC Network, former Clemson great offensive lineman. And I just want to remind folks out there that 2015 game, I went back and saw was reminded in your bio from the Clemson days, you were the co-offensive player of the game for the Hurricane Joaquin game, and as named by the coaches. And you graded out at a line best, 88% on 60 snaps while playing in a monsoon. So yeah. Maybe one word to describe that experience, and where does that rank in your strange football journey?
Yeah, grateful is kind of the word, man, because it's something that, again, I mentioned the family ties and the amount of folks I have up in the Indiana area, and quite frankly, it's funny enough. Just a quick story for you. I was committed to the University of Tennessee for a long time as a tight end to Philip Fulmer and that whole staff. And when they got fired, brought in Lane Kiffin and just wasn't the right fit. And Notre Dame fans will love this, but we were sitting in Lane's office, and he just had to say to my dad, this must be a dream come true for you, to do this and experience this. And my dad looked him dead in his face and said, "No, sir. If this was my dream, you'd be Charlie Weiss, and we'd be at Notre Dame right now." And so that kind of set the tone, and that kind of tells you where my dad's head is at or was at that time. But that was a special game to me. Had so many family members in town in a hurricane, the absolute one of the craziest games I've ever played in, just from that environment. And it was a little extra special from the family feel. So love that game. Had some great competitors. I remember, Jalen, number 9 linebacker, one of the freakiest guys I've ever played against. Just his speed, his awareness, the things that he could do. And it was a hard-fought battle. We kind of crept out in a big lead at first, but Notre Dame came roaring back, and it came down to a goal line stand to get a W. So a fun game. And, it'll be exciting to see what this one can do. Vegas knows something. They're confident that it's going to be a close one. We'll see if the Tigers can muster up some BYOG magic.
There you go. You got the paperweight to prove it from 2015.
That's
and
right.
Yeah, that's that time again. Thank you so much, Eric. Be well, and we'll see you down there, I hope.
No doubt. Appreciate you guys so much.
All right. Take care. That's Eric Mac Lain from ACC Network and Clemson Lore. And we'll be back. Tom will rejoin me, and we'll wrap things up after this.
Back on the pot of gold here at your WNDU studios, your home for Countdown to Kickoff, counting down to kickoff to Clemson. The magic of podcasting. We did the first segment, I was here. We did the second segment, I was not here. We're at the third segment, and now guess what? I'm back. We're back to talk Clemson, I hope.
It's an illusion.
I hope you learned a lot about Mike B. Mike B, I hope your questions to Eric were on point. I'll listen to the interview later.
So will I.
Yes, you will, and you'll conduct it. You'll conduct it later too. Even though in this segment you've already conducted it. So the magic of podcasting.
Did we do that right, Producer Jerry?
Sure. Yeah.
Is that how it's done?
Times Sports Mental Concept, man. Yeah, we did everything
That's right.
We're all fine.
Jerry's in a haze right now. He's got Missouri on his mind. So
Missouri, Georgia, man. In Athens, 3:30 CBS.
What's your call on that? What's going to happen?
This is the game where Georgia reminds everyone they're Georgia. Kind of like they did with Kentucky earlier this year, where they're like, oh, this could be close. No, it's not.
Are we picking Georgia, Missouri? Do we have a pick? No.
Well, one Tiger. Pick your favorite Tiger team you want to pick first.
There you go. We'll go back to Clemson. Best news about Clemson from a media standpoint, it's a noon start down in Death Valley. None of this 7:30 stuff. None of this writing until 3 o'clock in the morning. Mike Berardino will be at Memorial Stadium. I'm taking the weekend off to concentrate on basketball. I've got other things on my South Bend Tribune and the Insider plate. So Mike B going down to Clemson. What's wrong with Clemson? They're 4-4. You called them what, the scariest 4-4 team in America?
Scary, best, all that.
Best.
And Jeff Sagarin still has him in his top 25. I had him in my top 25 right up through the third loss. I think I had a 3-loss Clemson team in there.
So after the Miami game, you still had him?
Well, maybe 2 losses. Maybe after the third loss, I took him out. Although that was overtime, couple overtime losses. Marcus Freeman's right. Don't look at the 4-4. Mm-hmm. The 4 losses are quite misleading. It's not a championship caliber team, but it's certainly a talented team overall. It's also a team that's it's going to have the proverbial chip. This is the Clemson Super Bowl here, and it's a. It really does harken back to some of Dabo can really whip them into a frenzy, and one of the ways a great leader will do that is to put it all on himself publicly. He'll create a spectacle and take the pressure off the players.
Did he do that this week?
I think he might have done that with Tyler from Spartanburg. It was everybody's heard it by now, but the idea that pride goeth before the fall, as I think Tyler from Spartanburg correctly laid out, the Proverbs 18-16. I think that's the predicted final score of the game. But Dabo didn't like that. He was he got out scriptured, and
you just can't out scripture Dabo Sweeney.
And so look out, because it's very rare that'll happen in the Clemson program and with their culture. And I just think that they're going to be you're going to get their best.
You're going to get their best from Clemson, but is Notre Dame's best better than Clemson's best?
Quite possibly.
It might be. I think Will Shipley not expected to play? He's in concussion protocol.
Where is that? I mean, he's not ruled out, is
Well,
he?
he's not ruled out, but he's in concussion protocol. If you saw the hit, did you see the hit?
No.
It's a pretty nasty hit that he took in who'd they play last week?
They played
NC State.
In the NC State game.
Not a basketball school, by the way.
Not a basketball
right. Dave
school.
Doran going right at the
Make it
big
very clear.
boys.
That's not a basketball school.
Steve Smith has ruffled a few feathers this week.
And you didn't see that hit because it's on the CW.
Oh, yes.
That's why you probably couldn't find that game.
The old ACC Network. Ask Eric Mac Lain about the CW. No, don't say it. What does Clemson do well? Anything? What does Clemson do well?
You know, they're not so bad on defense. They're sneaky, they're solid on defense. They also get the ball up and down the field, but then they've been terrible in the red zone and terrible luck on the turnover margin, and 10 lost fumbles. And I think we all know that every time the ball's on the ground, it's a coin flip. It's a random moment in a football game. I don't think people talk about lost fumbles enough that way. And as you look at through the course of a year, that should normalize. Notre Dame lately, every time there's been a takeaway opportunity, it has capitalized. Last year, until they got to Syracuse, actually no interceptions at all, no takeaways until they got to BYU game, and then the Syracuse game kind of started to turn it. And Al Golden's defense now has a reputation as takeaway city. But a lot of that, especially the fumble part, Clemson's been snake bit. Cade Klubnik, still very talented, has the pedigree. They're not all weaponed up on the outside as in previous years, but there is a Clemson way. There is a culture there. There is talent. There is Dabo and his staff. There is a Riley across the way, a Garrett Riley, whose brother is still smarting from the play calling misery he had with USC against Notre Dame. And you don't think Lincoln Riley would make a little time on the phone this week to help Garrett with something, some of his regrets and some of his second thoughts about how he might have approached things differently. He does not have Cade Klubnik is not Caleb Williams, but I just think there's a lot more to this game. Plus, I know it's noon Death Valley, not night Death Valley, but that place will get loud. It'll still get loud.
Have you been there?
I have many times in my Augusta days. One way in, one way out. There will be traffic.
Still? In 2023, there's only one way in, one way out?
There's no flyover exit or anything. It's still like 28 in and 28 out. Lake Hartwell. You get to Lake Hartwell, and then you're within 45 minutes of parking.
Oof. And
it's like right there, So, but, God bless them. It's a great environment once you're there, and I look forward to it.
Give me a pick.
Well,
here we go. Give me a pick.
This one is a tough spot for Notre Dame, and my whole thing this year is going into the year. I felt that there would be 3 losses in the regular season. We were made to pick that record, and I went with 9-3. And my rationale was Notre Dame would split the 2 marquee night home games, and that is what happened.
Yep.
Notre Dame would stub its toe somewhere along the way against a team likely on the road that you weren't expecting them to lose to. That was Louisville, in retrospect. And going into the year, I thought Clemson on the road was just, after what happened, the beatdown that happened here, the field storming, the way Dabo Swinney processed that and said they'd had their butts kicked up down the field, that they've heard about it and thought about it many, many times since then. And that's why I do think you'll get Clemson's best, and I do think on this day it'll be enough. I'm going to pick the same score as the 2015 Hurricane Joaquin game, and this will be the Tyler from Spartanburg game, 24-22 Clemson.
All right, so you're picking Clemson because you picked Notre Dame to finish 9-3 this season. I picked Notre Dame to finish 10-2 this season. So I'm going to pick Notre Dame.
All right.
It will not be an offensive explosion. It'll be more of a rock fight. I don't think the Clemson offense will be able to finish once it gets in the red zone. I think they're 121st nationally in red zone offense. I'm not sold on Cade Klubnik. I'm not sold on Will Shipley coming back from his concussion. Defensively, it'll be a grind again. 1 week after Jared Parker and the Notre Dame offense roll up 500 yards, they're going to be opportunistic offensively. Sam Hartman may throw a touchdown pass. Maybe he'll run for a touchdown too. I'm going to go Notre Dame 24, Clemson 13. Keep Notre Dame on track to finish 10-2. Keep Notre Dame on track not to go to the Pop-Tarts Bowl. And that's my pick. So
Mitchell Evans not playing.
Mitchell Evans isn't playing. Somebody's going to step up. Maybe Jaden Thomas. Hello, Jaden Thomas. Yeah. Maybe Jaden Greathouse. Maybe, again, we could say maybe Chris Tyree, but now it's become Chris Tyree. He's going to make at least one big play somewhere along the line. In the passing game, in the punt return game, as we saw against Pittsburgh. Somewhere along the line, it's been for the last couple of weeks, Chris Tyree is going to put his stamp on this game. Maybe he does it Saturday.
It's a 2-week streak. It's been nice to see for Chris Tyree, but go back 3 games, and he looked over the wrong shoulder for the touchdown and basically dropped a touchdown.
But it was still a big play.
Him. He was in the middle. He's in the mix, huh?
It's still in the mix.
It's a fascinating game. There's a lot of subtext to this game, and it's why we'll watch.
So that is it for this week's edition. We will not be here next week. We're back on another bye. They go 8 weeks, get a bye. 2 weeks, another bye. So that's it for this edition for Pot of Gold here at WNDU Studios, your home for Countdown to Kickoff. For producer Jerry, for Mike Berardino, I'm Tom Noie. We'll talk to you in a couple of weeks. Have a great weekend.
This is ND Insider's Pot of Gold. Now, with all things Notre Dame football, here's Tom Noie, Mike Berardino, and Austin Huff.